All right, so this next session is going to focus on CIDWS transition. And I kind of just want to set the stage a little bit, talk about a few simple things. I think we heard a lot of good information this morning. The first thing I want to talk about is the CIDWS transition survey that AS was sent out recently. There's two portions to that survey. One is taking a look at kind of an updated inventory of interfacing applications. And that's going to be really important because I'm going to take that information and I'm going to combine it with some of the work that the IEWG did in the past. And I'm trying to create an inventory of all of the various interfacing applications that states are using. And I'm going to try to do some work in terms of finding commonalities and common functions and needs amongst the states. And then we're going to be working to really set up some communication tools to connect people so that it's easier to facilitate finding other states that have needs, or maybe just, supporting a particular project and following that through implementation. I think we're moving into kind of a really cool and fun, very me-like community-based development approach for Prime. And I'm all about connecting people. So years ago, we had on the Azure website a CIDWS user community, and you can go in there, and it was really just a peer-to-peer support network. So if you had a question about implementation, if you had a question about Prime, if you were looking for some functionality or something like that, you could ask a question that went out to everybody. You probably got an answer in about 10 minutes from Kate or Damon or Barrett or somebody like that. We took that down in favor of SharePoint, and SharePoint has developed to a point where I'm not sure by a show of hands who loves SharePoint. Exactly. So it's kind of a missed opportunity for me. I had a fully functioning kind of community that's no longer existing. So I'm going to do some work to kind of reconstitute that, and I'll be reaching out to all the states to show you guys how to get re-engaged, because I think that's really important that we're able to connect with each other. I mean, if you just look at the CMDP presentations that we heard, a lot of those questions are just basic implementation issues, and we have questions. What are other states doing? So that getting back to the CIDWS transition survey, the two parts of that: one, the interfacing applications inventory. So if you haven't done that, or you don't know what I'm talking about, come up and chat with me and I'll show you how to get in and update your inventory. The second portion of that is an actual survey, like a SurveyMonkey type portion. And you would go out, and a lot of that was designed to help collect information that we think will help with your transition plan. So when you start assembling information and answering those questions, you're actually working towards collecting the information that's going to help towards your transition plan later. And so we'll be sharing some of that information with EPA so that they can prepare their resources to better meet your needs. So very important that you guys work on that. We have not set a deadline because I'd like you guys, after Justin presents on it, to have an opportunity to ask questions, clarification questions, or anything that you want to get done. When we get back to the office next week, I'll resend kind of a communication to you guys, and we'll set a deadline for at least the survey portion. I think the interfacing applications collection will keep open because I'm also interested to see if people can update their inventory as they modernize their applications. So there might be some use with that we can do later. One of the other big kind of transition things that Justin mentioned earlier this morning, the kind of ECOS shared services tool. Michael brought together this shared services work group that I'm representing ASDWA on, working with ECOS and a couple of CIDWS state kind of administrators at the state level. And that's a really exciting group. I think we all have the same kind of vision in mind that we want to get this collective inventory. ECOS already has a really nice website that we can kind of leverage to meet this need, where you can say, hey, I need a reporting mechanism, and you can search their inventory and see if something exists. If it exists, you can take that and apply it at the state. If it doesn't exist, you can state that you have that need, and other states can say, yeah, I need that too. And then those states can connect with each other, start going through the multi-state grant process that we heard about a little bit this morning, move into a community-based development project, and then share those things out. And I think that's the really, really powerful aspect of Prime that we may not have been able to facilitate as easily in the kind of state-fed world. We're going to be able to develop tools that everybody can use, whether that's a custom user interface or a reporting mechanism or any kind of add-on piece. I look at Prime as a component-based system. We saw all day yesterday about the core module. And so that's EPA's responsibility. They're going to be taking care of that core portion. All of the pieces that we tag on, that's all the component-based stuff. That's all of our interfacing applications. And in a modern kind of software development environment, we have opportunities to kind of connect with each other and work together and share all of that work and then build off on top of that work. So you might see, a custom user interface that's kind of overlaid because you don't like the way, the Prime interface works for you, and you could share that out. Maybe your state's just going to change their logo or change the colors on it, or maybe you're going to change everything, like that save button. Man, just the scrolling back and forth, right? You guys saw that, right? All right. No time for jokes, serious stuff. So with that kind of primer, was there anything else that I missed?
That's great.
All right, that's good. All right, so with that primer, I'm going to kick it off to Justin. Justin's going to talk a little bit about the survey and then the transition template, so how those two things work together. Then we're going to hear from Renee, who's going to talk about data migration, cleaning up data, some other stuff. And then we're going to hear from some of our the EPA contractors that are associated with the, what is it called? BPA, that Trang talked about earlier, and some of the advantages of working with those contractors that are already engaged in Prime and familiar with the software architecture. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Justin. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Anthony. So this is great because we've already talked about so many of the things that I'm going to talk about right now. So hopefully we have a full session and we can get through to talk about data migration and data quality with Renee, and then we can get ERG and Peridot up here to talk a little bit about the services that they can offer you. So I'll move relatively quickly through this. These are the steps basically that you need to take to get into transition, essentially. So and these are things, some of these you can be doing now, and some, there will be working toward for the future. First, again, complete the transition planning template. That'll really help you develop your strategy for transition. There's so many things in there, like determining your funding and contracting needs, and you'll develop your transition team, and you'll take an inventory of your interfacing applications, et cetera. More to come on the running the data quality checks and make sure that your data is in good condition to transition to Prime. As we talked a little bit about throughout various sessions, the LRDR and VES connection, if you are planning to go that route, you can establish that before you actually transition, and we'll have that discussion on that a little bit later today too. When you're ready, work with the transition lead, that's me, to schedule your transition activities, and then once we figure out how long we expect things to take and what the workload is, we can begin the transition when it's your time. To outline the type of aid that we have available to you for transition, we offer technical assistance both via phone call or email, but also up on Zendesk we have our documentation, user guides, and training information that's still being developed, some of it. But we're also going to conduct webinars. And then earlier today, as we mentioned, we have Ian grants available and access to contractor assistance via the BPA. And again, you'll hear a little bit more later. And then, as we were just talking about, we're really looking towards facilitating a development community and really building upon shared services so that each primacy agency is able to have their own Prime experience and their needs met for their own personal business practices. As mentioned earlier this morning, other funding mechanisms available to put towards Prime transition are the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Set Aside. I think you guys got a handout on that, and then the Public Water System Supervision Grant Program. So, what can you do now? As we mentioned, fill out the transition survey. So that, hopefully is going to give a nice base for our work on transition, both for your primacy agency and for EPA. We're hoping to have basically a cheat sheet available so that we're not coming to you and just asking basic questions about where you're at and your readiness for transition. As mentioned, the survey will also go a bit of the way towards preparing your transition planning template. So, you'll come up with your project team, and I will emphasize that I think the project team, really needs to be people that are both capable of getting you through to transition, but also people who are capable of evangelizing for CIDWS Prime and teaching the rest of your users how to use CIDWS Prime to complete your day-to-day business. So, be thinking about the type of people that you want to have on that team. In filling out the transition planning template, you can think a little bit more in depth again about funding requirements and your interfacing application needs. And then again, what can you do? Data quality checks. We talked about the pilot phase a good bit yesterday, so I won't spend too much time on this. But again, the pilot call has been issued, and we're looking for 5 to 6 states and a region. And there's expectations and criteria sent out, and we're really looking for states that are going to be able to really help us have a successful pilot and be able to work towards getting other primacy agencies into prime. But if you're not selected for the pilot, or if you don't have the resources to be able to do so, it's also going to be beneficial to explore what is available in prime during the pilot phase, so you can determine your own transition needs, what gaps are out there for you, and develop your own adoption conditions for prime. And we talked a little bit about this. So building a robust library of shared services, that's one of the things that we're really interested in. So we have things to build upon: the Prime UI source code that's going to be available in the spring, APIs and the LRDR VAS, and the EN grants for usable component services list are things that we're building on, hopefully to build that resource for everyone. And Michael mentioned this morning that to that end, we've established this Prime Data Exchange Services Group. And the goal of that group is to encourage development and sharing of services to supplement the Prime UI and to meet the needs of the primacy agencies. And some of the activities that we've been involved in thus far is compiling an inventory of existing state and EPA managed shared services, and then also looking use cases of similar applications so that we can get a sense of lessons learned from those processes as well. And we talked a little bit about the membership of that group. So these are a lot of EPA folks, and then folks from ECOS, including states Colorado and New Mexico. Anthony's on the team, and then we also have contractor support that's able to, document a lot of the decision points and keep up with action items. So that's what I have basically on the transition part, but we can take a few questions now, but we'll really move on to Renee before too long, because I think people are going to be really interested in data migration. But if there are questions on transition, we can talk now.
Any transition questions for Justin? Okay. Well, they'll learn a lot about the process if they do the survey too. So, okay.
Yep. Now for what you've all been waiting for, right? So I like cool tools, so of course I had to make some cool tools for data migration. Oh, my header's not working on this.
Mine did that too.
Okay. So first of all, I want to say data migration is split into 2 major steps. The first step is moving the data from the primacy agency system to a common format. That's going to be SID with State 3.3, and then to a prime format. The format is similar to the prime database, but it is not the prime database. The process for the second part of data migration, moving that data from the prime format into the prime database, is still being developed and will be determined by around October 2018. So I'm just going to be talking about the first part. And that's what me and my contractor are working on. So here's the high-level architecture of what I'm working on. So you got your database files on the left, and I have the 3 processes. So I take your source, your data source. I'm going to be asking for like a dump file. I'm going to move it into, and if anyone needs to know what a dump file, I'll be getting instructions for that and everything. So I need the data from your database. I'm going to throw it into a source database. Then I'm going to use a tool called Informatica. It's a great cool tool. It's really fun. I have a picture of that later. I'll show you. But that's going to map it to a common format. That's going to get it to SIDWIS 3.3, SIDWIS State 3.3. From that, then I'll use Informatica to map it to the prime format. Along the way, I'm going to be doing data quality checks. So every time I do a data quality check and I find errors, I'm sending you back to the beginning. I know it's tough, but since you guys are using CivWith State as we're going through this, other errors might crop up. So I need to keep going back and through with your data through the whole process every time. And it'll get easier. Once you clean up the checks, it'll start going through faster. And I'm going to go through all this through the next couple of slides. So first thing is, how do I move that big database file or data file from your CivWith State into EPA? We have all kinds of limitations on moving big files. I thought maybe I could do the production control. It won't accept the file big enough. So I had to come up with a new process. And Systilex, who's helped me all the way through this, came up with a Go Anywhere. It's actually a tool we use at NCC, but we're going to set it up for this process. It's a great little thing. And Indiana actually helped us with this. They sent their file using Go Anywhere. We've actually improved it since doing it with Indiana to make it even easier and better. So we'll be providing you a link when you're ready to start submitting your file. And it'll allow a huge file to be uploaded. So if you're one of the bigger states and have lots of records, I can get it. I will be giving you a set of required tables to help you pull the data, so you're not pulling everything. But it's up to you. If it's easier for you to just pull everything and dump it to us, that's okay. We'll only use the files that really should be going into the system. You're going to use this link that I send you to upload your files. It'll make it much easier for you. It will. I have some slides coming up to show you what it looks like. Once we receive the file, then we're going to pull it off so it's not sitting up there. Again, it is a secure system, but we don't want it up there forever. We're going to be logging it, so we'll have a record of when you submitted and what you submitted. And we'll move it into the EPA secure system. Here's what Go Anywhere communication looks like. It's an email I'll be sending to you saying, please send me a file. And it'll send this email and it'll give you a link. Once you get the link, it'll say, please upload the file. It does have a process bar for showing you how it's loading. Again, you can see from this slide, Harold uploaded a 2.gigabyte file. It actually loaded pretty quick. I know some of your files are going to be much bigger than that. It's okay. It will take some time, but it's a secure, easy to use upload. So once we get your file, first thing we're going to do is take a look at it. Does it meet the requirements? Is it a good file? If it's not, we'll immediately send you an email. The best part of this, and you know me, I like to make sure we communicate. So we'll have all kinds of communications going back and forth. You'll have an email saying, we got the file. You'll get an email saying it's acceptable and it's going to move on to processing, or it wasn't, and why it wasn't. Once we upload, or once we get your file, we're going to upload it using a utility to the source database. When we get that data uploaded, we're going to add some fields into that data, basically the primacy agency. Since CivWith State, all the tables are going to be similar, we want to be able to differentiate between the different states coming in. And that will allow me to have multiple states in the process at the same time. And I'll be able to keep this data separate. Just so you know, we're going to have lots of states coming in. I'll be doing this for multiple at the same time. We want to keep them separate. If your system is a SQL Server, we'll have to convert that SQL Server format into Oracle, because we are going to use Oracle. When we do that conversion into the source, if we see any unexpected tables, any unexpected fields, when we did Indiana, we did find a couple of tables we didn't expect. Sorry, I'm just doing it now, Sarah, but we did find some tables. In the future, we'll be communicating that right away in an email. We did find some unexpected fields. Names were a little different than what the standard 3.3 is. no problem. We can deal with it. We just will document and let you know that these are some differences. We'll also notify you if there's any errors in the format. Your format's bigger than what the field is expected, things like that. Any other kind of issues. And then the next step, once we have your source file, we'll move it into the common format. So this is the SID with state 3.3. We'll send an email to state with any issues. And this is an automated process. So I hit the button to say, go ahead, move it to common. It's doing a bunch of error checks, or it will be. I've only programmed some of them. I haven't programmed them all, but it will automatically send an email if it finds any errors. This is kind of nice because then you don't have to wait. Oh, Renee's got to get the email out. System does it. Everything's automated. I just hit the button. So if you get any errors, what I need you to do, go back to your state system. You fix it there. I'm not fixing it on my side. You fix it in your system. You go back, start at the beginning, and submit a file. Again, dump it down to the source, move it over to common, run it again. Like I said, your guys are working in your SID with state. Things can, new things can be added, new errors can show up. So I want to start at the beginning every time. So once it's free of errors, then it moves on to the next step. So this is Informatica. It's really fun. I get to move arrows around. It's a cool tool. I just thought I'd show you that. And it's automated. So it's doing all this all by itself. Once we do the mapping once, that's good. We're good. And I do want to say for the non-SID with state states, the one thing we're going to have you do is do the mapping to 3.3 for us. It's the only way we can do it. So you give us the mapping, we'll do an Informatica for you so that you can keep running through the system, but I need the mapping from you. I can't do that mapping. So once it's past the common format, everything's good, no errors, we're going to move it into a prime format. Prime does things, their database is a little different. They do a lot of codes. Now, we do some in SID with state, but Prime has even more codes. So I have to convert, say it's a surface water, that's code 141. I need to do all that conversion on this format. So I'll be doing those conversions. You don't have to worry about any of that, but that's why I have to move it into a Prime format. But that doesn't solve everything. They're still going to have to, the developer's still going to have to figure out how to move it into the database itself. And there's some other things. They have surrogate keys and other keys that they're going to have to figure out how to add that I can't do. But I'll have some other data quality checks here as well. Some differences, maybe your one of your fields doesn't match what Prime is using, and we'll go back and forth and make sure if Prime should have that field, we'll make sure it gets in there, or that code, I should say. So we'll run through errors. Again, it's an automated process. You'll get the email. You'll know what's going on. And unfortunately, you have to start back at the beginning, back at the source. So once it's good to go, we've moved it to Prime format, then it's up to developers to move it to the Prime database. And so I'm stopping at the Prime format. We'll figure out the process for moving it into the Prime database. Again, another cool mapping. And I wanted to show you, this is the workflow. So there are decision points along the way, and these decision points, send out an email. I just wanted to show you. We do have emails going out. It's all automated. I don't have to do it. You don't have to wait for me to do something. It's all part of the process. So it's as automated as I possibly can get it. The only problem is you guys got to fix your source. So the other thing I want to mention, Prime database is in development. There's going to probably be some updates, so I am going to probably have to continuously update my Prime format database, and so there might be, as we go along, some additional fixes we'll have to do before we can get it completely settled. But those should be minor, but they can happen. And And again, the process for moving into the Prime database hasn't been developed yet or figured. And since the state is currently using your system, again, as we go through the process, errors may crop up and we'll have to go back through and either fix the errors or agree that this is an error we want to continue through. So I'm all about keeping you guys informed. I will have a sheet, a report that you guys can see what's going on with your file. And Region 7, this is just an example. They really haven't submitted yet, but I wanted to give an example. Actually, probably less lines. It'll take you one, right? Right through. So I just want you to see, I will have this report for you so you will know where you are along the process all the time. And I do expect there'll probably be more than one file submitted, so except maybe Region 7. So I want to go back to Indiana. What we have done so far. Again, thank you to Sarah and her team. They were great. They used Go Anywhere to upload the file. We figured out some kinks. We actually figured out a way of making it easier. So Go Anywhere, we can send one link. We don't have to send it to a certain email address and things like that. So it's we made it better, and I expect we'll improve as we go along. As I had said before, Indiana, we did discover some tables that would not be used for migration. That's okay. If you want to, it's easier to give me everything. I can ignore the tables that we're not going to migrate. That's not a problem. I just want you to know I'll give you a list of what tables we expect. We did identify a difference in a field name, and that's okay. We'll figure out, either we'll talk to you or we'll be able to figure what it really should be. The other thing I do want to say, if all your data is not in CIDWA state, if you have some spreadsheets that go for some of your rules or something, we'll work with you to figure out a way of moving that in. I do understand not everything's in CIDWA state, and we want to make sure you get everything into Prime so that you can be functional completely. So for Indiana, everything moved into the common database with no issues. Of course, they were 3.3 to begin with, so it was fairly easy. For the move to the Prime format, we only have moved the water system table so far, so we haven't had any issues. Their water system table is fine. Now the Prime format water system table is not the same as the CIDWA state water system table, so I'll be splitting. That's another thing I have to do with the Prime format, is split the data from the water system table from CIDWA state into multiple tables for Prime. So that's, so I only did some of the fields. And the pilot will continue. So I'm continuously mapping out more of the tables and moving the data. So Indiana, you will be hearing from me soon. So be ready. And I'm also coding more data quality checks. Again, the whole process. And so the ones that I've added, the Prime database, those aren't figured yet, but I wanted to let you see that they will be moving it into staging, a test. We called it prod mirror. I don't know if that'll stay, and then production. And so we'll be figuring all this out as we go forward. And if you have any questions, you can contact me or Justin. So instead of doing questions now, I thought I'd run into the data quality checks you can do ahead of time. Okay. So where's my slides? Oh, sorry. Can you go back to your contact information slide? Sure. Don't know me?
Renee Morris, you guys also have a registration list that has everybody's contact information in it. All right, that might save me some time.
Yeah. Yes, it is in the end of the next one. So it is in the end of this next one I'm doing.
Hold on.
I broke it. Didn't
Yep.
I break it? I broke it.
Totally broke it.
Technical people, what do you expect?
Tech support.
And you guys all know Systelex. They're the ones who have done the reporting services and all the cool tools that I always showcase. So they're helping me with this as well. So I want to talk about resolving data quality issues prior to even getting to data migration. The types of data quality checks you guys can do on your data before you even think about transition is or migration is the FedRep. Review your files, any issues that you didn't address. I'm going to do those same kind of data quality checks. So if you fail on your system, they're going to fail when you try to do the data migration. The data quality matrix, although since most of you are at 9999, I think we're probably good. So if you're not, check that. CMDP has some data quality checks for the sample data. Those are really good. Use them. And then any other data quality checks. So for the FedRep, again, go through. Remember, FedRep does a 3-year time period. You're going to have to open it up to review some of your historical data. Make sure you do that. Correct any issues you find in your system, and then run it again. Please correct any issues. Data quality matrix, again, review the reports. That reviews the stuff in CIDWS Fed, so it is limited, but if you've submitted to CIDWS Fed and it wasn't correct, you'll see it on the data quality matrix. And then do the fix. Unfortunately, you have to wait till the next quarter to check the data quality matrix report. But those codes are going to be in my data migration. I'm going to use those data quality checks. CMDP, again, they do have data quality checks for sample results. So take a look at those. They are on the Zendesk. So, and you can contact the CMDP group if you have any questions about those checks. Other data quality checks. So New York, Idaho, and North Dakota all have some great data quality checks, and yes, I'm going to steal them and use them in my data migration. So they are on the ASDWA site, so if you want to do it ahead of time and check your data, some of them are pretty amazing and really good data quality checks. So again, use those to check your data and correct any issues. And the other thing, if you have any deviations from CIDWS 3.3, CIDWS State 3.3 format, let me know. Identify the differences. Identify if you have data in another format, another way. We can work with you to try to figure out how to move that into the source, and then I'll move it into the common. Or you can do it ahead of time. It's up to you. But if you do have some differences, please put together some kind of report, some kind of notification to me, so I know when we do try to do the data migration, I don't miss any of your data. Because the point is, we want everything going into Prime. And contacts: Renee Morris, Justin Wright. I'm making him secondary contacts. So let's open it up for questions now. Didn't I give you money already?
Hi, Renee. Damon Gudrun, Massachusetts. So I'm seeing a fairly robust number of data quality checks and validations that are required to move data through this process. And I'm sort of thinking big picture, future after we migrate kind of thing, where we've seen APIs are two ways. So that states will still maintain other systems that are going to push data through. Are we going to anticipate a similar level of data quality checks and validations on a push from an API?
Yes, that is the plan, at least as far as I know.
Because and I don't know what level of effort yet, so this is not necessarily something that's critical. Might be easier, but I'm really wondering if state with 1,700 PWSs might just be easier data entering them. than trying to go through this process. Now, it doesn't get me a historical water quality data and historical stuff, but the inventory stuff might be more easily than mapping to Sidwith State 3.3 and then going through this process.
Only for the non-Sidwith states.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not thinking the other states, they've got the same table structure, but there's a real difference of table structures here in a lot of states that have Sidwith free systems or states that are not using Sidwith State in its entirety.
Yeah.
So, I'm just sort of wondering about if anyone wants to think about that out loud.
Yeah, you're always the troublemaker, so I think once we see how the process goes, you might want to do it or see how easy it is, the mapping. We could definitely talk. I think we should. And you do FedRep, so you already do some of the mapping, at least for the Fed values.
Renee, after you go through kind of the initial stages with the pilot states and you get the rest of the Informatica process built out, do you think it's possible that that could be made like a standalone process that we, as Sidwith State, will still submit things through FedRep, but that we could use that as a data quality tool to get our data cleaned up? And prior to it going into the Prime database, in other words, we could just be working on that.
I do expect that we'll use some of the data quality checks that I'm writing in Prime, so we will not lose these, and that was the point. And so, the regions do a review of the data, and you guys do a review of the FedRep before you submit. I see some of this being part of your Prime as well.
Yeah, because what I was thinking is if we're using Sidwith State and we're not going to transition until late 2019, and you have these tools built, if we could start working on cleaning up our data, because it may take us a while with that, instead of going through the full process to convert to Prime, we just have the first process of getting clean data.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see a problem. Like I said, I'm automating it as much as possible. And so, and once the mapping's done once, I can use the same mapping, at least from source to common, and then common to Prime format.
Okay.
Just going to kind of work my way back here.
Okay, so when you're pulling the data from a live state system, the process for the mappings and working out the errors and that, let's just estimate and say it, maybe that takes a week or something. So in that week's time in the state system, more data is being added.
Yep.
So are you going to do a final data pull?
Yes.
And then immediately shut off that state one right after that final, or will it be like taken offline before that process starts?
I wouldn't shut off the state system until you're ready to completely be in Prime. So yes, before your final, we're switching off the state system and moving to Prime, then we do another final submittal.
What they just mentioned is we lock the users out. The states can lock the users out so that you don't have like a day there of data added being added. Where
Yeah, absolutely.
So in terms of the data quality checks, and I guess there's a lot of the existing mechanisms that are going to be used, it has seemed to me historically that there have been maybe some differences of opinion between EPA and states on certain aspects of whether there are really data quality problems or not. Have you thought that through in terms of which ones are hard and fast, denials of the submittal, and what kind of things can be an agree to disagree, and the data still gets moved?
I have thought about that. One of the things in our workflow is going to be a decision point. Is this an error that we can't move forward, or is this an error we're going to flag in it, and you'll know it's an error, and but it's still fine. It's still acceptable to you. It's historical data. I don't care if that field isn't, perfect. So yeah, I think that's part of the data quality work group that I'll be working with. Hopefully Shirley's still on that team to identify those, because I know some of it yeah, it shouldn't stop the process. But then again, others should. If you have an invalid water system, well, that stops everything associated with that water system.
First of all, I'm changing my name. You made two comments. One was you were going to ask for an upload, but we could give you a dump. Are you going to limit or ask for a less than a total replace or total data?
I can give you, these are the tables I need, or I can take, Indiana sent me their whole database. So I'm.
She wants to know if you want Texas.
And that's Indiana. When they first tried to submit, we didn't have the go anywhere big enough. We've improved it.
Well, she was saying that one of her actions files is 6 gig.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm ready.
That's right. But you're talking, because you said that there was some data that wasn't accepted, but that's for tables that aren't in the 3.3 or the data that's not that in the base 3.3, or I don't understand that.
In the base 3.3, there's a lot of temporary tables. There are a lot of tables that, user information. I'm not going to need that for.
Okay, but you're not taking the historical violations or sampling data. You're talking, you want it all. Okay.
Yeah.
That scared me.
Never. Don't let me scare you.
Okay, so that answers both my questions. Thank you. I just remember people when they went from their legacy to 3.3, they didn't go all the way back.
I'm going all the way back. You give me what you want in your Prime database. Yeah, that's what I said.
Hey, Renee. Isn't it FedRep does not really take everything? It only picks, there's only certain fields that we send to you. So are you going to be sending us queries to run against our database for what you're looking for? So that we won't be sending you just like a dump of the tables that you needed, and then we get a bunch of emails back from you with all the errors.
When you're ready to do the data transition, I'm going to want to dump, and I'll send you an email with the errors. And yes, I know there's going to be a lot, but
so that's why I'm saying, why don't you give us the thing that you needed so we can run the query from our database? Then we can give you a cleaner version, so we don't get that much. And also, are we going to be able to see the tables where it's going to go? Because there are some fields that we use that are, for example, the state location. We might use it for like the operator certification thing. And we want to make sure those things gets into Prime if that field is in Prime.
Okay, yeah, I can certainly give you the structure and what I'm moving.
Yeah,
so,
because
yes.
when we do the conversion,
absolutely.
We want to do the mapping ourselves too, so we know that it's going to go.
Absolutely. I will give you the mappings, and I will show you the table structures, and I would love to get your feedback. So if I'm missing something or mapped it wrong, I want to know.
So I'm going to get from you queries and the table mapping.
The queries, yes. I'll work on that one. There are stuff you can do ahead of time before you decide to transition.
This is Monica from Idaho. Just a point of clarification on the FedRep error reports. When you run the extraction in FedRep, you get those error reports, and then after they're submitted, you have the ODS error reports.
Yes.
Could you clarify whether you're going to be looking at just the FedRep side or also those ODS error reports?
I'm going to be looking at the ODS as well.
That's unfortunate.
It's better, right? Clean data, clean data. And again, as we said earlier, some of those will make the decision whether or not it's an error that stops the process.
Buddy Souza, Region 1. Where in the process, if it does exist, are you going to transition the data that's already in the data warehouse into Prime, and how does that work? Because that would get into historical information. I wasn't really clear when you were going through, again, how you're going to do that, if you're going to do that.
I'm not going to do that. I was not planning on moving data warehouse into Prime. And we can talk if that's a big issue, but this is your state system.
Hi, Renee. This is Doug from Hawaii.
Hi, Doug.
You said we have to do the mapping ourselves. What tool do we use to do the mapping, or we just work with you on the mapping?
Only for the non-CIDWA states.
Okay, so sit with state, how's the mapping done?
I'm doing that.
So you're doing it for us?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good.
You're all set. You don't have
all
to
right,
worry.
thank you.
Damon's the one that's going to have a lot of work, and Leah, or Jason. Sorry.
I know you've been fearing me.
Yes.
Barrett Brown, North Dakota. In our CIDWA state database, we have hundreds of water systems that are considered historical.
Mm-hmm.
How are those being handled through this transition? Because they basically fail most any data quality check.
So if you want it moved into Prime, that's one step. The other step is we will have to make some decisions on what data quality errors for that historical stuff that we can live with or what we can't. And so it could result in you having to clean up some of the historical data or deciding not to move it.
Yeah, because I can obviously live with a lot of data quality issues on these.
Yeah, yeah.
But can the Prime team live with them?
And that's going to be a team discussion and part of the data quality work group we'll have to figure out.
Okay.
Not you again, Damon.
Go back here before you go up front.
Hi, Renee. This is Jackie Pine from Region 3.
Hi, Jackie.
Similarly to what Barrett just said, we had a state that recently converted to CIDWA state, and we have a lot of active historicals because a lot of those don't need to be there anymore. They've been replaced. So we're still, I understood that to be there like for a 3-year period, and I think we'll be at the same kind of a decision point, but we do have thousands of those. So just wanted to give you the heads up on that.
Yes.
What? An active historical means that it had been submitted to CIDWA Fed at one point, and it's no longer an active system, and it's coming back, and it's saying where is it, because it's not in your data file anymore.
Okay, partially right. An active historical is one that was active on the last time you submitted, and then for some reason it never made it into the ODS the second time around. So either because of a error that rejected it, or you just failed to go back far enough to pick it up. Those are the ones you have to worry about. But my worry is with, and it goes back to Barrett and Jackie, is that if we don't bring in the historical systems, if they are somehow or for some reason reactivated, we lose all that back sampling and historical data, which has to go with that system.
Yes. And that's why I think we should try to get the historical, but we're going to have to come up with a scheme on decisions on the data quality for it.
Yeah, Damon in Massachusetts. So yeah, expanding on the ideas, some of the reasons why I think they have to go in is that, for instance, we've assigned public water system IDs.
Yep.
You can't duplicate those.
Yep.
So in our data system, they retain them so that you can't pick them again a second time.
Yep.
I'm sure it's the same thing in Prime.
Yep.
But you can't hold them to the same data quality standards that exist today. I mean, I think
agree.
you need to figure out some process to flag these systems as simply a placeholder.
Yep.
Now, as Shirley said, some of these facilities really exist. They weren't just a data entry error that got into Fed. And if they should reopen at some point, if they're a commercial facility, for instance, you got to have that history connected to it. So I think you're going to have a category of public water systems in Prime that basically are not held to the same data quality standards, because we're not going to go out and look at an abandoned facility to figure out the lat longs.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And I do think we.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think they're placeholding for legitimate purposes, but the quality need not be held to today's standard of active PWSs.
And I agree. I absolutely expect we will come up with a scheme for these are the data quality checks that for the current active systems or recently inactivated, but we do have historicals that, okay, we won't be as strict on the data quality. So yes, you're going to get all kinds of emails.
Again, I guess just coming back, I mean, there are some violation data that are no longer in the states, so transferring just the state's data we're going to lose stuff that's in the data warehouse now if we're not going to transfer or transition any of that past information, because we have had requests from states to remove some or to like close off violations that are no longer in their system. We're going to lose all that information if we don't transfer any of the data that's currently existing in the data warehouse.
Not really, buddy, because the data warehouse, that's keeping that data. That's not changing. So we'll still have it. If it's not in the state system, obviously they weren't worried about it. I'll keep it in the data warehouse. So that'll be the same setup.
But you said you weren't transferring the data over from the data warehouse to Sidwis Prime.
I'm not, but it'll stay in the data warehouse. So those violations that aren't you said they're not in the current state system, they'll still not be in the current state system, which is going to be Sidwis Prime, but they'll stay in the warehouse. So we'll still be able to.
Which will be the federal database of record?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Renee, it's Alan from Astua. My question is your bandwidth. So if we're here 12 months from now, well, I mean, really, if we're here 12 months from now and there's 20 states queued up, yeah. So, I mean, are you going to be able to pull in other people, contractor support, et cetera, or so? Yeah.
Yes. And that's why I'm automating it. I'm not sending out the emails. The system's sending out the emails. You're not waiting on me to do something. So.
Okay. And that tool, Informatica or something?
Informatica.
Sorry.
Yes.
I'm a civil engineer. So anyway, but that may help automate it too. I mean, that may help.
It is automated. That's what,
yeah. That's assuming it all works okay. I'm just saying if it gets to the point that may reduce your workload by having that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm all about that. I'm like Rachel. It's all about me.
Hi, Renee. This is Chuck from Oregon. If we go back to that slide that had the 4 different columns that you had for Region 7 for just a moment.
No, it's the other.
It's got to be in the other presentation shot.
It does.
Just do this. Hey, this is why I'm here, right?
That's right.
Tech support.
I should be able to do this. I am tech.
You see what I'm doing, right? I'm opening a PowerPoint presentation.
I can do that.
And she's going to automate all this. No,
You're funny.
This is why I get paid so much money.
Are you going to be telling us, when we get an error, are you going to be telling us only for the column that we're in right then, or will you be telling us all the errors that could be identified through all 4 columns at the same time?
Nope, where you are at the point. So for the first one, 100, got some errors in the database import, you'll get an email, I'm stopping there.
But you'll be telling us all the errors in that column then,
yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we got Kate.
Thank you. No.
Okay, so next year, you'll be able to show us the common problems as people move through these processes.
Yes. Because it's automated, I'm going to have a record.
So a state starting out this process
is going to be ahead of the game.
Will be able to see forward of what they know they need to fix.
Yes. So yeah, there you go. We can have webinars as we go. So the first ones do data migration. You're going to suffer the most. Sorry.
Hi, Renee.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi. I just want to confirm that all the ID numbers, the violation ID, enforcement ID, site visit ID, et cetera, are all going to remain the same as they are now, and they're not going to be renumbered in Prime.
That's the plan. I don't know. I'm not the Prime developer, but we will try to insist on that.
Okay, and follow up to that is, how are the EPA enforcement actions going to be migrated? Is that something that you're going to be taking care of, or the regions are going to have to do, and how is that going to occur?
Hold on. I'm not sure what you mean. The
migrating the data.
So
there's the EPA federal action data. How is that going to be migrated? Are you going to be handling that for all the 10 regions? Or are the regions going to be doing that? And how are we going to be doing that?
That's a good question. So that is SIDWIS fed data that I'm going to need to move, isn't it? See, buddy, you're right. Okay, I revised that. I will have to figure that out. Got that written down. Thank you, Jackie. See? And that's why I want input from everyone. We'll figure this out.
Tom Adams, State of Missouri. Do you anticipate, for those of us who are in SIDWIS 3.3, any points, if we're doing something within that environment that may not make it in, like, I'm thinking of like state-created codes or field parameter sizes where, a comment field is going to be less or something in Prime, stuff like that. I mean, I noticed, Indiana's in 3.3 and they had a couple of issues, but I mean, are there things you kind of see, even for those of us who are in SIDWIS, that might pop up?
I do expect there'll be little tweaks for every single state, little things we're going to have to address or adjust. So I do think this is going to be a working together kind of issue. So as much as I can automate, there are going to be some times where I'm going to have to call you up and say, I got an issue here.
So in that light, can we get some feedback from the Indiana migration or the process?
Yes. So unless Sarah has an issue, I would like to, as I move along, especially with the data quality checks and stuff, and any other, table names difference or field differences. Yes. And I would hope that for every state that joins on part of the pilot, they have no problem sharing their migration issues or tales and great things that happen.
Renee, on that slide you got up on the screen, what's the time frame? Because, if you get number one and you get issues and errors, and it takes, I have a small database because mine's only a small number of tribes, but all the other people in this room have an economy of scale here, and it's huge amount of work to correct those errors.
Yes.
So if it takes me a year to correct the errors from each one of those renditions, it's going to be 4 years from now before I get to move my stuff.
Definitely an issue. So Texas might take longer than Paul, yes. But it depends on how many issues and as we learn. So as we learn, they can start doing some of those fixes ahead of time. So we know this is an error. Is that a problem in our database? So hopefully we'll learn as we go along. They'll be faster and faster. And, Paul, you might go flying through all of them with no problems.
Thanks.
It sounds like it would be a good idea to have a prioritization of which errors to be tackled first, if there's going to be thousands and thousands of those.
Yeah,
so maybe that could be shared.
And that will be part of our, what ones will stop the process, what ones can keep it going, and which ones, for historical systems, we're just going to ignore.
You also said you can use or you can help upload data that's held outside of CIDWIS, like in Excel and other access. Are you going to provide the format, or do we just need to I know there's a bunch of different PAs that have like their site visit deficiencies held in Excel files, in many different formatted cell files. So
we'll talk. So
Okay.
for every state that has something like that, we'll have to work out a process, but I don't see it being a huge issue because you got the same fields. I mean, if you have a deficiency, it's a deficiency for
it just depends on how they
Yeah.
store that data.
Exactly.
Is there any limitation on the format that you will accept? Because I know some use Excel, some have Lotus, some have, here's my hand chicken scratch on paper.
Okay, I'm not going to accept your paper.
Not mine. Not mine.
A case by case basis.
All right.
Hey, Renee, it's Damon again. So along those lines, actually, that's an interesting thought. Is it all one process moving through in one job? Like you have to merge your CIDWS state data with your Excel spreadsheet with your Access database?
Yeah.
Or can those be independent jobs?
I would probably put them as part of the source. So for Texas, if they have an Excel spreadsheet, that would be their source would be different, but just for that table.
Yeah, I guess the question becomes, you're going to tell us how you're mapping prime tables to CIDWS state 3.3 tables. If the state is using a different process to store that table in CIDWS state 3.3, could that be a separate job? I mean, if it's just a one-to-one table population.
It would go back to the source one. So I would move it into the 3.33.
Oh, so you'd have an intermediary CIDWS state table, and then you'd create one dump of the whole CIDWS state schema or whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
Bear Brown, North Dakota. Going back to that topic, I guess my suggestion would be if someone's storing data outside of CIDWS now, don't deal with it as part of the migration. Migrate it in later on through the bulk data upload process. Worry about the CIDWS transition first, get that done, and then bring that in later.
That is a great idea, and I think that's probably depending on what the data. If it's simple, yeah, that we could probably do as part of migration. But yeah, if it's complex and
Optional requirement. But then you get into the optional requirements for like the deficiencies and the things underneath it where they may have the site visit, but they only report the deficiencies if there is a violation, but where we may want to, the prime is going to require the deficiencies within the, it all depends on the requirements. It may, the sub requirements, and yeah.
this is going to take a lot for you to figure out, isn't it?
Give me my 13 and I will.
I would if I could. Hey.
Everybody, Renee.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I think we're going to call up, we'll switch out. You guys are welcome to go down, relax, get coffee. You're alive. And we're going to bring up Peridot and ERG representatives who are just going to give a couple quick brief presentations, and then we'll end a little bit early and extend our lunch, and we'll get back on time after lunch. That sounds good. So just hold on one second while we switch out the panel. And I'm going to put ERG up first because they're right here. Okay, that's fine too.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Eva Noth. I'm with ERG. And today we're going to be talking about lessons learned from 2 active projects with both changing scope and schedules on the CIDWS Transition Prime BPA. I'll give a brief introduction of our team, and then we'll have Leon Rosania and Lori Potter talk about the Minnesota e-inspection tool. And Sagai Hailu will join us to talk about the Region 8 CMDP transition. Okay. So our ERG team includes Cadmus and GEC. Together, our three companies bring a mix of domain and IT expertise that covers the entire life cycle of drinking water data. Our experience includes drinking water regulatory development and implementation, sanitary surveys, preparing primacy packages for rules, and support for compliance determinations. We also have a long history of providing assistance to laboratory reporting, quality assurance and quality control, and conducting laboratory audits. We support primacy agency information systems and their reporting to EPA. And we develop and support EPA data systems and RESTful services that use CIDWIS data and provide data analysis, targeting, and enforcement support. So our 360-degree view of the drinking water programs, reporting processes, and information systems allow us to offer a variety of services and key insights throughout all stages of the transition process. So our current clients under the CIDWIS Transition BPA are EPA Region 8, Minnesota Department of Health, and Virginia Department of Health. Cadmus also supports EPA Regions 3, 4, and 6 with direct CIDWIS support and server hosting, including laboratory electronic data interchange, or EDI, for their tribal programs. And GEC provides direct CIDWIS support for a number of states, including Nevada, Kansas, Missouri, Louisiana, West Virginia, Rhode Island, and Maine, as well as software services for about 4 states, including California, Ohio, and Indiana. And Leanne's going to speak a little bit about the her experience with the EN grants and the project.
All right. I'm sorry about this chart, but I just want you to see that on the very top is the blue line that basically so anyway, let me step back. So I'm from Minnesota Department of Health Drinking Water Protection Section, and then my expertise in the past has been lead and copper rules, surface water treatment rules, special project like virus in groundwater or CCI electronic delivery ammonia in groundwater. So anyway, I was naive enough to say, okay, I like to take project, and then so I end up getting into project, and now I'm doing nothing else other than managing data project. So it started out with, we heard complaint from staff about our system is old. Like at that time it was 12 years old. And then seems like the manager didn't know which part to tackle first. So there was a lot of JIRA ticket being piled up, and there's no prioritization system. So anyway, I decided to take 2 approved project that has been go through Min-IT, get approval, but then get stuck there because we don't have a business requirement document to provide them. We don't have cross-functional flow chart. So we are expecting our IT service in a different department to understand our business. So I said, okay, I will try. So in 2015, I talked to Greg Fabian. I said, Minnesota has to come up with a better way to kind of retire our system. What is your suggestion? And he told me at the time, go directly to Seaweed Prime. And I listened to him. So I thought it was that simple. So anyway, so 2015, I actually meet the deadline to submit the Exchange Network grant application. And surprisingly, we got it. And that was for CMDP testing and implementation. So that's the very top, the second line, the gray one. So that's the CMDP project. And then, so if you see that underneath, that is the different part of the CMDP project that we progress. And then you see a red mark. And that's where we kind of, for the last 7 months or 7-8 months at least, we don't have any activity on that because there were some issues about data mapping. And then, so right now the project is on hold. But secondly, I'm going to focus on the second piece that is, I think is in the green shade. And that is that second exchange network grant that I applied, try to revise a project called e-inspection. It was stuck in IT. And then the first project for CMDP implementation actually was a project I tried to resuscitate. It's called the Drinking Water e-portal. So anyway, from there, I started with 2 applications, went in, and then again, surprisingly, we got it. And then so from there, we now actually start to formulate how we are going to transition to Seaway Prime. So if you look at the lower part, the more like in yellow shade, those are other applications, and I'm hoping in some of the API that we can adapt to. So including, we already complete one that is called EPA reporting, because we were having so much time devoting on EPA reporting every quarter. So we are kind of try to separate certain functions supported by our legacy system and try to move it or modernize it so in the future we can more easily adapt to Seaway Prime. So it needs some kind of interface with Seaway Prime. Currently, but anyway, and then we had a certification, operator certification, service connection fee, and then data report and all that supposedly go together with the third exchange network grant that we applied last year, and then hoping that we are actually getting it. That is the lowest part is the Seaway Prime implementation, testing and implementation. So that will give us to September 2021, and then we will allow our legacy system to run extra year, and then we are hoping to retire at that time. So now I want to go back to the next slide. Go to the next one. What is the, yes. So I want to talk about BPA. Second exchange network grant is for e-inspection. And then because that basically is a sanitary survey application, including 2 parts. One part is to really kind of have a sanitary survey application that is modernized from our legacy system. And then second part is to basically map it into a field device, a mobile device that can use for our 50 our staff that is sanitarian and district engineer and then source water protection planners. So we got it for $300,000. Half of it come for EPA in kind contribution, so it will be a contract service, and then the other half, $150,000 for IT development. So if you look at this work plan, actually have 2 shades. One is in the middle, that is the IT development. And then the first part is some kind of a business requirement document that we actually map out some task in the BPA. And the BPA will talk about number 1. The task number 1 is to do everything relating to sanitary survey in the e-inspection, what kind of document we need to have. And then so that when they complete, we can submit that with a project proposal to MinIT, and then they can use that to develop the application. During this time, also, we have the ERG continue to involve to provide some kind of technical consultation. And then when finally they have the product, ERG will help us to do some training. And then at that time, our CMDP implementation project assumed to be completed, and then they can also provide a little bit of the CMDP training. So that was, again, earlier I talked about it take time. So we map out this work plan long time ago, and then things start to shift a little bit. So I just want to so far we complete the first task number 1. That means we actually have a very thorough examination of our sanitary survey process. Our staff spent a total of about 500 hours, but then I feel really good about it because the whole group feel that they are moving something towards something they wanted to for a long time. The beauty of it is when we had the ERG come in with a team, and they were very effective because they speak the same language. And that within the first hour, I heard few of our project team say, I really like this. You bring somebody who speaks our language. So because we couldn't communicate this piece of information through our management because they are just too busy, but they were willing to devote 500 hours within 4 months to come up with some product. And then so I will get to go into the detail of what kind of product we end up getting. Thank you.
Thanks, Leanne. I'm Laurie Potter with Cadmus, and we are the subpart of the ERG team that was assisting Minnesota on this project. I was partially responsible for it, but it was strongly led by 2 people who couldn't be here. One is Karen Sklenar, who has done quite a lot of work for headquarters at EPA, developing sanitary survey training materials, training states how to do sanitary surveys. She used to be in charge of a field office in New York State, so she really knew the subject, which is speaking to what Leanne mentioned. And also Laura Hardesty, whom a lot of you all know. She's usually here, but she's on military leave this week. And Laura has worked with a number of states and regions. So as Leanne said, one of the main things that we brought to the project was that convergence of subject matter expertise on these 2 fronts. So we held about 5 meetings and worked through to get to, let's see, page down, Anthony. Oops, oh, I jumped to work on a project that was going to have to not be our typical process for developing software. We couldn't do this in an agile process because we had to develop a package that could go off to MNIT. So instead, we were developing a product collaboratively, the 500 hours of investment by the state staff, in about 5 facilitated sessions. And we still tried to use some agile principles in those 5 sessions and looked at how we might establish some guiding principles that would dictate some overarching things that were essential to the state about this product, and then apply those as we went down and created basically a minimally viable product, because that's really what we knew with 150,000 they had to devise. But they had a lot of people with a lot of interest. So our first suggestion was dream big and we'll narrow down. And that's how we moved through this process. We had about 13 members of a work group, all from different backgrounds, as Leanne said, and we worked on these principles, and we thought about what we needed in terms of minimum business requirements and refined them as we went along. We kept revisiting them because things would emerge as we worked collaboratively, and the group was excellent, worked really well together, and made distinctions between those things that needed to be done for key users. So key users could be in a group of people who would actually be in the field versus key users who might only need to use the tool itself or information from the tool, potentially back at the home office, or there might be a technical assistance provider or someone who needed to use some of the information obtained from the tool. So we tried to segregate that information. We also went down quite deeply into the business requirements, and I'm going to show you just a quick frame of what we put in the final document. Actually, I'll just pull that up now. So here's an example of sort of an overarching list of things that would be needed. I'm not going to read through them, but the idea is that we would create a list of the wish list of the things that were essential to these different user groups, and we would assign them priorities. And they would be in plain English, the must have, should have, and they would love to have, wish we could have kind of prioritization schema. And those were evolving too as the group worked together over time and as they re-edited the document. And we also talked about where there had to be intersections with other groups, like with the source water protection group that had to do the wellhead contaminant, potential contaminant source inventory. So this was a tool that helped them as they went through the process, but will continue to help them. And that'll be the last point we'll make, which I'll come back to later. We also recognize that not everybody can articulate their needs until they can visualize what this tool might do. So one of the visual tools that we thought would help both the group and MNIT when they went into development was to create some wireframes that would be obviously hideous UI, but the idea was get something on the paper that would spark a discussion. And so we created some example ones, but we didn't want to be the drivers of this process. We did a few just to show them how that would work. And then during the facilitated sessions, broke into sessions where people could devise these themselves with crayons or whatever, or electronically, however they were comfortable. And then we would try to reorganize and include them in the requirements document. So as that showed, well, let me go back to it. As that showed, there are a lot of different sub-processes that are going to be covered in a e-inspection, and that's what this document had to walk through. But there also needed to be an overall understanding for MNIT and even the group about how all these moving parts were going to work together. So we realized we needed some kind of an overarching synchronization process that we could flag visually. So we created another graphic that helps them identify where the inputs come in, where the information is going, and who are the parties that need to see it. And again, more detail than you need to see or more than should be on a slide, but just wanted to understand that that was part of this requirements gathering. To round out on Minnesota, the thing that also happened at the end was that this wonderful list of must-haves went to MNIT and was immediately greeted with too much, still need to downscale. So I think another lesson that is going to permeate through both of these projects is the need to be flexible and adaptable, because we're going to be likely coming back to Minnesota to do one more facilitated meeting where we can shrink that list even further. But this process of using these requirements gatherings and putting them into these prioritization schemas have now taken what was an unmanageable pile of interests and needs and put them into something where there's been a real consensus built about a group. And we should, in one session, be able to effectively shrink it further. So that's everything about Minnesota. So I'm going to introduce Sagai Halu from Region 8, who's going to come up and talk about our Region 8 CMDP project.
Thank you, Lori. Like Minnesota, we were very optimistic about our expectations from going into CMDP and transitioning into Sidwest Prime. I understand that these applications are designed to accommodate the great majority of primacy agencies, and Region 8 happens to be an exception. For two reasons. One, we have a state of Wyoming that we regulate, and therefore is not accounted for under one primacy agency, two schemas, a tribal and a state schema. The second exception is that our applications are housed at NCC and not in our own office. So the people at NCC had to be educated just like us about CMDP and Sidwest Prime. And so we had great assistance from ERG and its subcontractors. And therefore, we were able to go through a number of road bumps. The first one, to give you an example, was the DSE did not upload our laboratories, for instance, because it was not looking for region certified labs, and our labs were region certified. And so therefore we had to appeal to the developers to allow region certified labs to be uploaded. So that was the first bump that we had to overcome. And then we had also the configuration issues at NCC as far as DSE is concerned. And so our contractor was able to go one-on-one, almost sharing screens with NCC and the NCC ITs to be able to recognize our situation. And he was able to configure or help them configure the DSE for our purposes. So that was a good step forward as far as the tribal schema is concerned. So we had a great celebration when we were able to pass a test data lab result, acting ourselves as a lab, and then also as a PWS, testing test lab test data passing through DSE to our CIDWS state testing environment. When it came to Wyoming, we could not do that because our Wyoming organizations were not synced with SCS from CMDP to SCS at all. So we didn't have the Wyoming PWSs, and the Wyoming labs were not populated in SCS. And that was, to us, that was a showstopper. And so actually what we ended up doing with the help of the contractor was to tabulate our issues, the problems that we faced. And we categorized these issues in 3 classes: showstoppers, bugs, and wish list. So finally, it was agreed between the CMDP, CIDWS Prime developers and us that one showstopper would be a priority, and that was that we should upload, we'd be able to upload Wyoming PWSs and labs into SCS. In other words, there has to be a synchronization from CMDP to SCS. But that is not going to happen until the end of September for various, obvious reasons. The developers have their priorities cut out for them. CIDWS Prime is the priority. So for that period, we're going to just simply stand still and wait for the developers then to take up our issues by October. So I like to really recognize people who have helped us through various road bumps that we came across. And I like to start with Michael Plastino, who was very supportive, and Will Bowman, Derek Tisley. They kept listening to our issues and trying to accommodate our issues as much as possible. And at the NCC, really, I think it would benefit everybody in EPA that we were able to also educate the ITs at NCC with CMDP and DSE and CIDWS Prime. We had special sessions with them, with our contractor also helping them. And then also at our office, we had a couple of really great resources, ITs. Charles Weinberg, who is at the office, and Kurt Tandy, he's way at the back, is also our IT guru. And actually, Kurt was able to have EDI, electronic data interface systems adopted by one of our great, our largest tribal, lab in our region for CAMRADs especially. So electronic transmission of data is not new to some of our labs, but the advantage of being late in the game is going to be that CMDP is not going to be a new news to many of our labs. They would have heard about it word of mouth from other labs, especially our neighbor Utah. And so when we eventually get to overcome our roadmap of the Wyoming schema, we should be able to move faster is what I expect. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Sagai. So I'm sensitive to time, and Sagai covered a lot of the key points, so I won't reiterate a lot of what we covered in our project, other than to say probably the most important thing we learned from both projects, and we're also learning with Virginia, which is on hold because it's largely a CIDWS Prime transition project, and we're waiting for things to catch up, is that these projects require extraordinary flexibility on the part of both the client and the contractor. And there has to be a real understanding. The project plan has to have a lot of flexibility. There has to be very routine communication. We have to be really listening and understanding the needs of our clients because they're changing. And what we mapped out on this slide is not what we're doing. It's not the way we're going, the way we approached it. Our approach is changing. We are revisiting assumptions about how we're going to approach labs given some of the challenges we've met here. Likewise, with Minnesota, we're having to pause because the MNIT group asked for a redo, so the schedule is changing and we have to reaccommodate budgets and scopes to think through those processes. But working together and with everyone thinking the idea is to get further down the field, the projects are working. So my thanks to my clients for this. And I'll mention that on this Region 8 project, the lead from our end has been Jesse Dahl from GEC. So I won't really even cover the other project pieces because they're related primarily to work we're going to be doing for them in the future. If this all works out, related, well, certainly CIDWS Prime, but related to CMDP as well. So thanks very much.
All right, next. Rana, did you want to come up or just introduce yourself? No, it's Rana is going to come up from Peridot Solutions and just introduce himself to the crowd. Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, good morning and thank you for the opportunity. Can you hear me? Okay. Yes. My name is Rana Chegu. I'm co-founder and CEO of Peridot Solutions. We are a mature, small and flexible business located in McLean, Virginia. I am here representing my team who also include Radiant Federal and Indus Tetra Tech. Together, we bring the expertise in both IT as well as EPA functional expertise. So let me ask you a fun question. How many people are born in August here? Raise your hands, please. Peridot is your birthstone. So, of course, we don't sell jewelry. We sell IT and professional services. We are 11 years old. And our focus is primarily on public sector, is both federal as well as state and local. We also have customers in United Nations nonprofit sector and some commercial. We are an SBA 8A company. That means customers can directly access our vehicles to give sole source contracts. We are a top secret cleared company. We also focus a lot in quality. We are one of the few small businesses with CMM level 3, ISO 9001, ISO 27001, ISO 20000, a lot more. We are currently providing our CIDWS Prime transition support to New Hampshire customer. So we have Leah and Carrie here. So any questions related to particular New Hampshire implementation, we can talk offline. We saved the lessons learned for the next event because we are in the middle of the project. We are learning from both sides, from the EPA side, from New Hampshire side. What we are doing currently are so transition planning, data mapping, and DSC implementation. So when we, just like my previous speakers told, when we walked in, we thought the assumptions list is short, but we were not, so we were wrong. So we had to change our assumptions, and we had to be very flexible and accommodate the changes in the schedule and also the requirements. So when I mentioned we are a flexible small business, we are really flexible. So 3 months, no cost extension, no problem. We signed it. We signed it actually twice. We have to be flexible. This is a new kind of like evolution from both EPA side as well as the state's point of view. The beauty of New Hampshire experience is it's a non-SIDWIS state. So we had to work with their legacy databases as well as the evolving CMDP, the changes there, and we had to work both sides, and we had to implement the requirements. So as a team, we have expertise in strategy, architecture, technology implementations, and portfolio analysis, performance management. In all these areas, Peridot Solutions, we have prime contracts in various customers. This is a short list of our customers currently. When we say we are a mature business, we are 11 years old. When we are growing, we are about 200 people right now, and we expect to grow 300 people and beyond. So when we talked about yesterday the APIs and data management, data quality, and some of the systems integration, legacy modernization, cloud implementation, all these challenges, we're actually doing it in various parts of public sector and commercial customers. We are not learning, we're not going to learn on your dime. We actually bring experts, both IT as well as functional side, and start implementing from the day one onwards. My philosophy is simple. We hire the smart people that including me, there are 200 people in the company, 199 people are smarter than me. My philosophy is again simple. Hire the best talent and take the rest of the day off. But you still have to check the email though. Send the two-word sentences like, excellent job, awesome idea, go for it. That works. So 95% of our customers gave us repeated business. I'm proudly going to say that our attrition rate is less than 10% over the last 11 years. We have people working with us for the last 10 years, 7 years, 6 years, and goes beyond. And if you look into our CPARs, which are federal government past performance ratings, they are excellent reviews. And if you look into our, some of these external portals like Glassdoor, some of our employees gave us excellent reviews about us. I'm going to stop at this point, but I'm going to reiterate, we look forward to working with you as the CMDP and SIDWIS Prime is evolving. And we are also learning with you. But with the experience with New Hampshire and working with Indus with Sidwis Prime and all, so we are hands-on and we are ready to work with you. One final thought, though. Our company DNA is part of our profit goes towards public service, community service, and charities. And we do that in 3 areas: support the warfighter, support the humanity, and the most important for you is support the environment. Every year, we planted 10,000 trees in different parts of the planet. Last year, we proudly, I'm going to proudly say that we completed 100,000 trees and we got an award on that. Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of our panel, and we're just a little bit early, so we'll just take an extended lunch, and everybody can come back here at 1:30, and then we'll get back on track. So thank you again for all your questions and presentations.